Logan Dean, hello. Welcome to Wizard Killers.
Hi, Richard.
Hey, it's really great to have you with us, and I know we have some folks in chat, and so feel free to jump in with questions. And Logan, other than being the disgraced head of research at Megacorp, tell us a little bit about sort of what you've worked on, what you're working on now, what people might know you for in the TTRPG space.
Sure. I'm Logan Dean. I wrote The Company, which is a corporate survival horror game in 2020. I wrote Extraction from Demon Fucked Cleveland. I did Metro Escape Bloodbath. Last year, me and Adam Bass made 1978, which was kind of a two-player Halloween horror game. I don't know. I worked at Explosive for a little while. I was the product development manager for Joking Hazard. So I did a lot of traditional board game, mass market board game development, product procurement, fulfillment, logistics, all sorts of fun stuff. Doing a lot of Kickstarter fulfillment consulting now, helping people with their games. Triangle Agency, by Haunted Table, working on Blister Critters with Still Fleet. Got some cool stuff coming out.
Nice. Hello, Real Meat Castle. And so I think with that said, kind of how did you get started, not only with horror, but specifically sort of how did you get started with horror RPGs?
I guess so. I started playing RPGs in maybe like 2001, like with the Star Wars D20 system that Wizards did. They had the Invasion of the box set, which came with yeah. And my friends and I bought it, and we thought it was a board game, and then we all made characters, and then like didn't know what to do because none of us were GMing. So like I took on GMing. But the Arkham Horror Second Edition board game came out, I think, in 2008, 2009. And I got really into that. And that kind of got me into playing board games again. And that got me into Call of Cthulhu. And so like I was playing Call of Cthulhu for a while. And then I started running it at shows for Chaosium because like a lot of people, you can run games for companies at like Gen Con and stuff, and they'll buy you a badge if you do enough hours. So like that's how I paid to go to shows for a long time, was I would just run games for Chaosium for like Saturday, Sunday at the show, and then I'd like Friday and Thursday like hang out. So I got into that, and then I got really into Mothership in like 2018, 2019. And the company actually started as a Mothership like module that I made, but I had it as a contemporary module, and then I just kind of broke off and changed it and tweaked it and made it its own thing. So that was how I made that game, which would be my like first game.
Nice. So you're also a huge horror film buff. I think that's not unusual for horror RPG people. But what is the sort of like what were the movies that sort of got you excited to sort of think about sort of bringing them to the tabletop? Sort of what movies kind of inspired the way you thought about horror for connecting with the tabletop or tabletop gaming?
So I used to live like 6 blocks from a video store. So like all summer I would just go and rent 50-cent VHS tapes like every single day and just watch as much as I could because I was kind of an indoor kid. So like from when I was like 13 to when I was like 16, like every summer, that's all I did all summer was just watch horror movies and like other stuff too, but mostly horror movies because they had the coolest VHS covers. And stuff like Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, like the Ramiro Dead movies, the Carpenter stuff, obviously, like the Thing, Escape from New York, like They Live, such, you know, timely genre films like at that time. But recently stuff like Michael Clayton, Tar is like a horror film.
Oh wow, okay.
Finding like that inspiration in what I find horrific, which is like everyday life, mundane fears of late capitalism, right? So finding horror in these things that not like people find horrific, but actually fear.
And you broke up a little bit right there, I think, unless we're having some terrible internet issues on my side. Could you repeat just the last thing you said?
Like trying to make like horror from not like things that are scary, but from things that people actually fear. So like,
Right. Mm-hmm.
I don't know, these like thrillers, like David Fincher stuff is really great because he has this way of like creating tension with just like dialogue that's really fun. And like his cinematography is just very tight. Like Mindhunter's really good at this, like kind of putting you in a psychological box as you kind of get the story around it. That type of stuff is really fascinating now. But when I was a kid, it was just like B movies, like Stuart Gordon movies, like Castle Freak and shit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. I think one of the things that we talked about a little bit before is that you'd really have a skill for building tension, and you're sort of you've I think that in that kind of hitting all the things that not just are horror, but that people are or horror conceptually, but that things that actually people fear, and that build the tension and build the anxiety. All fiction is driven by tension, but what's special about horror's relationship to, say, tension, suspense, uncertainty?
I think the interesting thing about horror is like it's an elective thing that people choose to participate in, right? Like because
Right. Mm-hmm.
fear is something that we all experience. But I don't think people seek it out as openly outside of like watching or dealing with horror media. So like what it is it's danger. It's a controlled danger, right? It's the same as like jumping out of a plane or bungee jumping or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's pushing yourself to a limit that you have so that you can get some kind of thrill out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that tension is something that we want to experience because it gives us a chemical reaction in our brain, right? It makes us feel a certain way. And not everybody wants to do that. But people who seek it out tend to like group together and become kind of a community, which is kind of fun. And so like we compare experiences and like we enjoy these things together, which is why I think like horror lends itself really well to tabletop. Not in that like it's hard to scare people. And at a tabletop situation, you kind of don't want to outwardly scare people because you're giving up safety, which is the thing you should really never give up at a table. So you have to find a way to create fear, but not like outwardly scare people because that is a breach of that social contract. So you create fear. The way I create fear is with tension, and the easiest way to create tension is to create it between the players, because the players don't they aren't really in the fiction. Not like this is the nature of what we make, right? Like they're engaging with it, but they're not in there, but they are there together. And so creating mechanical ways for players to interact adversely is kind of what I rely on. Things like clocks are really good because clocks create psychological barriers just by existing, because people have preconceptions of time and time winding down and time what that means. So if you introduce a clock that's ticking down and just say that, all the players are going to like immediately make a connotation on what that means and almost immediately think that it's bad. So all that work's been done for you tension wise because you've just introduced a ticking clock. And we all have a different fear of what that means. We all have a different anxiety around that. And to have these big general set pieces like that create this generalized tension and we let the player kind of fill in the blank there, that becomes like a laser focused fear for them. And you don't have to try and create this blanket thing that everybody's afraid of, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. So I think one of the things I keep thinking of is when you talk about adversity or strife, what does that actually look like at the table? I think a lot of people, when you talk about adversity or strife in any type of RPG, they're a little nervous about the game devolving.
Sure.
Actual strife between players rather than strife between players in the context of a game. So kind of could you unpack that just a little bit? Just like, what does that look like for you?
So in the company, the way I designed it is that every class has a job to do. And that is your main focus on how you get experience and points to spend to help change your roles to give you advantage. The problem is all of the jobs conflict. So as you're playing a soldier or a medic or a technician, your goal is to do something that is going to directly conflict with somebody else's goal. This is a mechanical device meant to create interpersonal tension at the table so that we don't have to find it within the fiction. We find it within the play.
Right.
So we drive that by, it's not deal breaking, right? They're just decisions players need to make that are going to be consequential. And they're not, I try to open the door and roll something. It's like, we only have this amount of time and we need to fix this panel and save this person, but there's not enough time to do both. Usually they split up, which rules. Because if I can get a group to split up, I win. Like it's awesome because then you can do so much spooky shit and like there's less people to deal with it. It rules. Like when everybody's a group, it's bad because then they'll diffuse the situation with like everybody overthinking it. But if you can split the group up and get like unexperienced people in the dark, that's the best part.
Nice.
So like we create tension by pushing these buttons, like pushing people into places, not characters, right? Like we're playing the players. And this is a thing like I think you have to do in horror is like know your table and like who you're playing with. And this is why it's really important to establish boundaries and veils and lines and like safety absolutely up front. Make sure you're never stepping over those lines. But when you can play within this box of like generic fear and kind of let the players find it, that's where it kind of feels the best when you're not pushing things on them.
Right. And I think that's a really interesting because it's a thing we always think about is like, how do we scare characters? And for a long time, you know, the big goal of Call of Cthulhu was to scare characters, or other horror games was to scare characters. Where I think Dread sort of kicked off a thing where, like, how do we get players to feel tension?
Yeah.
And I think that was the start of a very long sort of process of thinking about, like, how do we get that connection between the character's tension and the player's tension, especially when players are coming from like 20 different places before they show up for a game. Some of them are in the mood to spend time with their friends. Some of them are in the mood to actually be in a horror scenario. Some of them just want to hang out. So I think that's really fascinating to me that you're really looking at how do you bring that tension for the players. And you touched on this a little bit, but I'd love to get your thoughts on what is, horror, of course, operates across a lot of media, and horror novels function in very different ways than horror cinema. What are sort of the unique challenges of bringing horror to an RPG table?
The medium itself is inherently interactive, right? So like, and incredibly subjective on the person who actually reads it. So like, usually the weird thing is like if you're writing a horror or prose, you're interacting with one reader almost always. And then that reader tells somebody and interact with more readers. In RPGs in general, you're interacting with one reader who's going to disseminate that information to other people indirectly. So like that's weird as hell. Like that's an odd way to share art. And it's already unique in that sense. So even on like a video game where we all kind of interface with it the same way, one person is taking what you wrote and it's filtered through their interpretation of it. So I like to make big kind of tableaus. Like I liken them to like play sets for action figures. They're kind of empty with big bright colors all over them and like flashing features, but how they interact is up to how you present it to your players and what they do. I find in writing RPGs, and I've been writing all sorts of RPGs for a really long time, it's like the things that have everything detailed out and every single thing in every single room and everything that's going to happen, those tend to be big books like that people run through over years, and that's fine. There's a place for that, and people really like that. I like that from time to time, but I find the stuff that like hits the table more often are things that let GMs and players fill it in with their imaginations. And so stuff like Cleveland is like, it's a bullet list of things you'd find in this weird place, really, right? And then some tables, because tables are amazing. And so you can create this vibe that lets the imagination of the GM kind of carry forward, that lets the imagination of the players fill it in. And then they're like, oh man, you're brilliant. You did all this work. And it's like, nah, you guys did the work. I just gave you this like paintbrush, like you filled it in. And there's a balance there with horror. There's this like tell, don't show type of mentality. Like that's like, oh, like you don't see the monster and like it's the tension and all this stuff. And that's fine. But like, the GM's going to change that anyway. Like if they don't like it, they're going to make something up. Like just let them play. GMs want to be creative. I think a lot of people think they can't do it because they don't have time. Like
right.
But if you give people 2 out of 3 tools, they're going to figure out this. It's like the clock, right? The players have filled in the connotation of the clock. They want to create. They wouldn't be playing if they didn't. Like you really want to give players an open book, like an open field. That's a tight walk though, because like you don't want to like leave too much open, because like then they're just like, well, you didn't do anything. I don't know. Did I answer the question at all? I don't even.
I think you not only answer the question, you skipped ahead to my next question. So
I'm going
to throw you a curveball now. I think it's really interesting to me that, and I touched on this a second ago, like the shift from horror is something you read to horror is something you watch. That happened like in this, starting in the 50s, but really sort of pushing into the 70s. We got whole new genres of horror when we made that switch, or different things became very, very important. Like we can go back and write a slasher novel now, or a novelization of a slasher, but you really needed cinema to kind of create the genre of the slasher. Fiction created psychological thrillers and detective stories and suspense fiction that sort of go to some of the same directions a slasher does, but you will never get the feeling from watching a slasher that you get while you're just reading a psychological thriller. That's a different, distinct sort of opportunity. It's not a deficiency per se, but it's an opportunity. Sort of, what opportunities do you see coming for horror when you shift it to the table? Like, what kind of subgenres or opportunities or chances to explore do you find happen when you bring horror to the table rather than having a solo reader or solo or group viewer, and they're actually kind of immersed or interacting?
That's a good question. I have to go on like my experience on what I've used first, like, which is like I write about contemporary topics because I think that now is pretty scary. And people, there's a big push into horror again. Like there's a big rise in horror like consumption again, that I think was the last time it happened like this was like 2002, which is like it makes sense that people are kind of pivoting into this like I'd rather like be scared and an escapism because life is scary. So like, let's
Right.
do that. And like, it's almost like a vaccine, like an inoculation to the horrors of the world. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And so in tabletop, I feel like we can, instead of being viewers, being witnesses to this like inoculation of this horror, it gives us a chance to sit and talk about these topics or explore them together. Right. You're talking about Call of Cthulhu, and Call of Cthulhu is like kind of the classic of the genre, right? But Call of Cthulhu is based off of terrible like tropes made by like, you know, a noted racist xenophobe. And you're talking about a time period where it's usually like the 20s and 30s, not the best time for, you know, representation of marginalized people. So you're getting a very specific flavor there. And what I love is I love stuff like Chris Bibby, like doing like the Harlem. Oh my god, I have the book.
Harlem
Unbound. Yeah, like that book is incredible because it looks at that time period, and it gives you the whole picture of everything that's happening in Harlem at the time, and like all of this, like the Black Renaissance and like the jazz scene and all of this stuff that like the people who wrote Call of Cthulhu just didn't feel like talking about because like it didn't fit their narrative. But like it's absolutely a huge cultural touchstone happening at that exact period of time and should be included in it. So like those explorations are incredible and necessary, and we need to have these conversations at the table because people weren't doing it before. Like Moonlight on Roseville Beach is really great because you're talking about a mystery. You're doing mystery genre stuff, scary stuff with it, like, and like putting a spotlight on traditionally marginalized groups, right? Like, so people can have these conversations with these like guardrails that let them kind of, you know, explore these themes in a safe way that they weren't allowed to before, even in this medium. So like, I think it's really the same way like romance is being explored in like lyric games and like other stuff, like how we're finding all of these like intersections of like life and sexuality and like how we live and like the horrors of everyday life and how we live in this capitalist society and how we survive. Like we have these conversations already at the table. Like this is why people play Dungeons and Dragons, is to have a successful life as a freelancer and go on adventures, right? Like that's escapism. Like we're having these conversations already. We're just couching them in these like other realms, right? And that's all horror's ever done, is hold a mirror up.
So I put one question in to kind of lead us into thinking specifically about RPGs as the thing that and this is a show very focused on creators developing new game material. We want to demystify writing. We want to demystify publishing in the RPG space. So when you think about all that detail about horror, there's things that players need to know. There's things that GMs need to know. But we, as the designers / writers, producers of material, we don't get to be at the table. Except kind of in this mediated space. What is, and let me make sure I'm phrasing this the way we originally talked about, but what do we think about as writers, designers when we're creating horror content? You mentioned earlier, you know, you're creating something for somebody else to sort of perform and present, and with the intention that it will be paraphrased and developed and sort of localized for that table. What is uniquely challenging about sort of thinking about horror when we're not the people actually bringing the horror game to the table, and that people have a very different relationship with us than a script does for people producing a movie.
I mean, my process is terrible because it's usually like I have an idea and then I like just start laying it out and then writing, which everybody loves. That's why almost everything comes out riddled with typos when I release it. And then that you get to V4 and then there might be one less. I'm trying to like think. Writing for horror is weird I write speculative horror most of the time,
Right.
usually around tech.
Mhm.
And the hard part about that is reality keeps scooping me. So
Right.
like anytime I come up with some weird tech thing that I think is horrific, oh wait, like Elon Musk usually does it. So like I have to kind of figure out how to be scary in a world that's terrifying, and like it's trying to
Mhm.
one up me all the time. That's really strange. But as I mentioned earlier, I stopped trying to write scary things. Like I stopped trying to write things that were like monsters, right?
Mhm.
Because people aren't really scared of monsters. People
Right.
aren't scared of, I mean, people might be scared of ghosts, but like I think it's more fear of not knowing what it is, right?
Right.
People fear, like people have fears, and that's what I've been trying to write. Like fears of like people have fear that they don't have enough time, they're going to be alone, they're going to like not be enough. Like these are things that people actually fear, and you can turn those fears. That first one, don't have enough time, that's just a game mechanic. You can put that right in there. So
Right.
like
Right.
you can create horror out of the mundane by just capitalizing on fear. And everybody has fear.
Mhm.
It's just this idea of keeping it within the safety of the box and the safety of the table, uh, and not overstepping that bound. But I try to just hit that, like that I also like come at it from a comedic perspective most of the time, because like that
Mhm.
helps. It's like it these are like really hard topics to talk about, and like I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm doing I a lot of the stuff like Psychers is all about like body mutilation, and like it's really a power fantasy, but at the end of the day like you're being changed into something, and
Right.
like
Right.
that's tough. I gotta cut
Mhm.
that with some sugar, right? Like I gotta put some humor in there. And like the
Right.
humor for most of the stuff I do comes through the satirical lilt of it being corporate. Uh
Right. Right.
Almost always corporate issued documentation. So like there's a very sterile delivery of it. That
Right.
way I don't have to deal with like the effects of feeling like I actually wrote it, because I can detach myself from it, because I have a very clinical corporate voice I write company stuff in. And like
Right.
then it can become funny,
Right.
because then it's a funny thing. Like it's like, oh yeah, this would be very clinical speech about how they're just like ruining these people's lives. Well, because like I listen to corporate quarterly calls, that's what those are. Like oh yeah, we made $10 billion this last year, best we've ever done, that's why we're eliminating 10,000 positions. Like oh cool, neat. Like you have to find humor in that, otherwise you're just going to start screaming. So like cutting all of it with this like really biting satire is the only way I think that
Mhm.
those work, because they could really easily fall into either like schlock, or they could fall into just being insensitive,
Right.
which is another like hard like turn I don't want to make, is something that's like
Mhm.
making light of something, or like um, being overtly gross about like a topic. um like I'm not making horror for shock value. Like these aren't like Eli
Oh.
Roth books. Like it's that's not my intent. It's
Mhm.
not like I love grindhouse stuff, but like Bloodbath is a good example. Like Metroscape,
Uh,
like it's a grindhouse type thing, but that was like a memory hole thing for me, because like that's based off of the roller rink from my hometown in Bay City. So like I was
right.
just like doing all this stuff, like pulling all these memories out, trying to like
Mhm.
make this thing. Um, but it could really easily just be just violence for no reason.
Right. 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 So I think to sort of you've already started going this direction. So I think just to sort of like walk people through sort of your process as a writer, I'd love to talk to you about Psychers and Metroscape Bloodbath. I think those seem like two good recent examples to talk about. If you're good with that, but feel free to
I'm
sort of
down to talk about whatever. Metroscape is a pamphlet. It's like this pamphlet. It's just a trifold. It's got a map of a roller skating rink, and it's about what is this about? It's about a roller skating rink that's got a bunch of people that are possessed by a sound.
Right.
And then the players enter, and they're immediately possessed by the sound. And so it's got like you're hallucinating as player characters throughout, but like the dangers are very real, and so you have to make your way through this roller skating rink. I wrote it for the Liminal Horror Jam a while back, and then I really liked it. Like I really like this one. It came out pretty good. The pamphlets I write really fast because I can't. If I stop, they won't get done. So
Metroscape Bloodbath and Demon Fuck Cleveland are the two that are coming to mind.
Yeah, like Demon Fuck Cleveland, I wrote in an afternoon, and I was like, I have to get it. I have to finish it because if I don't, I won't. And the same thing happened with Metroscape. I was like, I gotta finish it or I won't. And so I was doing the writing and the layout all at the same time, just trying to create the product because I had to finish something. And I work in these weird spurts because of the nature of my work in the industry, because I'm working on other games or I'm working on other products or I'm helping with crowdfunding or I'm doing all this other stuff. My time to myself with my work is limited, unfortunately. So I get into these spurts where I'm like, I got to get something out. And then I just like shit something out of my head. Psychers, conversely, was something I worked on for a little while. And Psychers is a game where you play as psychic test subjects, and you have psychic powers. And like it was twofold. It was I wanted to make a game like Spencer Campbell. My buddy Spencer Campbell makes games like Nova and Luna, which is on Kickstarter right now. And Spencer makes these amazing power fantasy games that are just like super rules light and super fun to play, and they're just like they do what they say on the tin, right? And I was like, okay, I want to make a psychic misfit game like Scanners or Firestarter, and I want it where you can immediately use all of your powers right away. But it's really dangerous, and like as you level up, you get more in control of that power, and it becomes less dangerous to use it. But if you wanted, you could just set a whole building on fire right away. That one took a while to kind of dial in, but I knew I wanted it to be a similar D10 system to the company because it's a secret company product. It's a play set for the company where you can give your characters those psychic powers. So like it was an expansion for that game that I pretended was a new game.
Right. I think that I want to go back to Metroscape real quickly because it transitions to a topic I'm really excited to talk about. When you start with, and you do that for the Liminal Horror Jam. Liminal Horror is a game that I think there's lots of us who are really excited about Liminal Horror right now because we've been looking for a horror system that's adaptable, that's goes back to some of the Call of Cthulhu things, like you're just a dude or a person who finds themselves in this terrible situation, and it's kind of on you to investigate that because you're the one who's there. Recently had a great time running Shelterwood Inn in Liminal Horror. But that is when you do that one, you're able to get rid of some of the load as a writer or a designer because you're creating a thing for Liminal Horror. It already has sort of like, here's how conditions work, here's how wounds work, here's how damage works. Here's a bunch of things you when you're doing something like that you kind of start with a bunch of stuff you don't have to think about quite yet, or you can only think about it. You only have to think about it in terms of how you're going to riff on it or what you're going to do with it. How is that? Do you feel like that's a good place to start? Is that something that you would look for opportunities to do again? How is that distinct from sort of doing your own thing from the ground up?
Well, I mean, making systems sucks. Don't. I mean, like the only reason I did the company was since I was at a terrible job. I'm surprised. And it helped me, like, it was the thing that helped me get a job in the industry, but it also helped me like exercise a lot of like how I was feeling about it. And I wanted to evoke something that I wasn't finding in tabletop games. And like that was the interpersonal conflict there, which is still something I don't see a whole lot. What was I talking about? Right. So like for that, I hesitate to create a system unless I know like what I want out of it. And I don't need a universal system because there's like 50, right? Like if I want to play spooky everyday horror, I'll probably just use LH because it's really good at that.
Yeah.
Like it's great at playing like weird like X-Files type games and stuff. Like if that's what you're trying to get. Like I've run Delta Green scenarios in LH because it works better than that investigation. Like I almost said software, and sometimes I'll say software instead of system. Please forgive me. But sometimes I just use that software. So like Delta Green's great, but it's not like it's a specific flavor, right? And like I like some of the investigations that line has, but I don't want to play them as a cop. So like
right.
And like that's another thing is trying to take police out of stuff and like figure out how to like experience these things that are like from a non-authority perspective. That's why I like liminal horror a lot. I wrote the example I like to point to of my ideal writing style is Cleveland, because it has nothing. Like it has no system. It's not part of anything. And honestly, Bloodbath doesn't have any stats or anything in it either.
Yeah.
You could run it with any system. I just wrote it for the liminal horror jam. I like this idea, like I said, this playset idea where you can just kind of like slot in your action figures with your system and then just play around in it. I think it opens up a lot. Like I've had people tell me they played Cleveland in liminal horror. They've played it in like Fist. I've heard people play it in Delta Green. I've heard people play it in Call of Cthulhu. Like they can play it all over, which is awesome because like I don't want to have to make a whole system to be able to sell this weird idea I had, right? So
right. Yeah.
And conversely, I don't want to have to learn a whole system to be able to write one. So like being able to pick up a zine like liminal horror and be like, oh, I get the gist of this will be good for accomplishing something. Like I would write in LH again. I've written for Triangle Agency too. Like that's another one that's got a very specific set of rules and you want to kind of play in that world. But I would love it. I wrote those things to be able to translate to other games if you're not playing that specific one. And like that's how I use modules though. Like I use old like AD&D modules to make modern things. Like you can take those ideas and cut and paste them elsewhere. I have a library of RPG shit, not because I'm going to run it, but because I'm probably going to steal from it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that one thing I'd like to like get your take on is in horror, so often the fiction you write down for players and GMs is going to do a certain percentage, possibly a really heavy percentage of that work. You're frequently in horror, we're removing them from things they know, or really good horror. And I know there's a push in Call of Cthulhu people right now, and once we're done talking, I'm going to play a video with Chaosium's Bridgett Jeffries, who's going to talk a little bit about that. But getting rid of some of those Lovecraftian signature monsters, partially just to sort of break the game's connection to Lovecraft, but also because it's starting to get the thing that Lovecraft said he was trying to respond to, which was everybody knows what a vampire is, everybody knows what a werewolf is.
Right.
And at some point now, everybody knows what who Yog-Sothoth is. And oh, I'm talking to Nyarlathotep again. And sometimes being known can be scary, and sometimes that thing like, oh my God, no, the thing that I most feared or the thing I know I'm supposed to be afraid of is actually here. But there's been that sort of shift. But when do you need, or when do you feel like you need to bring in something mechanized or a mechanic that's going to kind of shape the experience of the table, create some tension, create fear? I know that I really like the mechanics for losing control of your powers and psychers.
Oh,
Uh,
sure.
yeah, and so that's definitely a place I've seen you use it. But what's your thoughts on, like, when do you bring in that? When do you bring in the mechanics? When are the mechanics something you need a little bit more than just that layer of fiction? For
So
kind
I
of
so I work, like I said, I work in board games.
Mhm.
And board games are wonderful, but they can also be like really a lot. Like there's tons of them, and
Oh yeah.
you working in the industry, you play a lot of games. You
Mhm.
see a lot of how mechanics are used, and I always tend to gravitate towards games that use mechanics very thematically well, um, and translate that over to my work. So in my practice, I like to keep mechanics thematic as much as possible. Um, Almost all the mechanics in the company are thematically based, like down to the dice roll is like the amount of dice is based off of your training in those fields, and you're not trying to break a certain number, you're just trying to hit a number. You're not trying to like make a check, you're just trying to get a 9 or a 10. Essentially,
Right.
the
Yeah.
better you are at something, the more dice you can roll to get a 9 or a 10.
Mhm.
And if you fail that, everybody else gets stressed out because they're like, oh shit, you're not good at your job. Which is just like real life. So
Weird. Yeah.
in Psychers, yeah, you can use all of your powers right away, which was something I wanted off the bat.
Mhm.
The problem is the higher powers are you're more likely to lose control of them. And that means like you're gonna put yourself and others at danger. It's this high risk, high reward type roll the dice
Mhm.
type of thing. It's a yeah, it's a board game mechanic, just ripped it off completely. Took it out, put it in, lit it up. But it functions in the theme. It's not
Right.
there superfluously. Like it's not there just because like I want the players to explode all the time. But now that I'm talking about it, I kind of want to make a game where people can just explode at any time. Because that sounds fun. I'll write that
Well, yeah,
down.
and it's also the fun of it's the fun of uncertainty. I'm going to do this awesome thing, but wow, oh my gosh, what if the
And,
person next to me lights up?
and consequent. I mean, everything I write, especially in the RPG world, is a response to something I've played and
Mhm.
something I'm playing a wizard in a Dungeons and Dragons game that I've been playing for like 10 years, right? And so
Right.
like my biggest frustration with playing a magic caster in the big game is the spell system and how like I have to like have slots and learn spells, and like it would be cool if it was like DCC where I can just do any of these spells, but like the really bad ones are probably going to vaporize me, right? Like
Right.
that's what I wanted. And like that's thematically makes sense within that world, right? You
Mhm.
could find a high power spell and be like, I'm going to try this out, and it could just like end you. So, what does that look like in the fiction I'm trying to write? And so we translate that over, and we have to create a mechanic around it. So the mechanic is just uh, push your luck,
Right.
but keeping mechanics tied to themes helps from getting scope creep on mechanics and like trying to add too much or overburdening a game.
Mhm.
In the company, there's only like three, I think, mechanical systems. There's the dice, there's the player interaction, and then there's the drive, which is your experience, but you can also burn it. And you can spend any of your stats to boost rolls. Like you can like shave off HP if you need to like exert yourself. You can like go a little like stressed out if you need to like think harder. Like all of your stats are fair game for cannibalization, which is another thing I really wanted to touch on because like that's how we function in society is like we cut off or use parts of ourselves to exert ourselves out to be able to accomplish tasks because society's not going to meet us to help us, so we have to do that. And like
Right.
these are
Right.
all every mechanical aspect of it is a commentary on how we use that thing in our real life, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
like mechanics aren't these things I want to throw around. Like, I don't want a mechanic for reloading because I don't give a shit. Like, I don't need rules around how much stuff you're carrying because, again, I don't give a shit. I only care about how you're interacting with each other and how you're working together to solve the problem in the face of this danger.
Nice. So wanted to talk a little bit about 1978, which is a really cool project that you did with Adam Vass, and I'm blanking out on the other.
Justin Valeri.
Talk a little bit about sort of what was the process coming together on that particular one, which has a really kind of a really powerful departure point in the Halloween franchise.
Yeah, that was I made a joke tweet that Adam and I should write a game where I write a slasher book and he writes a survivor book. And then he was like, we should just make that. And he was right. We did that last year. It's 2 books. It's a survivor book and a slasher book. The way it is structured is a day and a night cycle. So the whole structure of the book is based around the film Halloween from 1978, which is where it takes its aim. But that's where it ends. Like the structure of the game is like that, but you get to make your own like slasher, you get to create your own survivor, and they are kind of playing a cat and mouse game throughout the day in which they're marshaling resources via playing cards, putting them in a tableau in front of them to be played at the night phase to try and kind of beat each other. The survivor is obviously trying to escape, and the slasher is trying to kill the survivor. So it plays on these, archetypes in the genre, but like very heavily like influenced by that kind of text film of Halloween, but gets into more themes of like stalking and like the town is a big aspect of the game. So like how like these traditions of communities kind of play out together and like how those reinforce these types of fears and stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's really good. I wish I could say I had more in the development, but like Adam kind of cranked that thing out. Like we had a meeting and he was like, yeah, we'll let's come up with some ideas. And then I think he emailed me the next day and was like, so I wrote this and I read this game and I was like, yeah, this is perfect. I think we tweaked it, the main mechanic a little bit from there, but Adam kind of like knocked it out almost immediately. And I was like, okay, cool. That's done. And then I wrote the book, all the prompts I wrote for the slasher. He wrote all the survivor prompts. Justin did an incredible job on the art. And we did all the production. Like we did the cards, and like each card has full art, like, and then it's got the prompt on it too. So like, because the prompts, each player gets a book, and the prompts are the same. They just have different kind of blurbs with them. Right. So you're playing off the same deck of cards. It's a shared deck of cards, and then you're going back and forth. But it came out really well. We're really proud of it.
Great. Okay. So Logan, last question.
Oh boy.
3 media recs that you feel like people writing, developing, creating games in the horror genre should engage with.
Oh, yeah, like creating anything in the horror genre, or just like specifically role-playing games?
You can. Yeah, I'm thinking mainly role-playing games, but if you want to go off in a slightly different direction, I feel like I'm very open to that.
I mean, I have like I'm always surprised. Like my biggest horror influences are like Michael Crichton and like J.G. Ballard, but that's just like they were writing about just like horrors of modernity. Right. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. I like this. Brian Evanson writes a lot of really good, evocative horror. Mm-hmm. Laird Barron made a whole like cosmic horror pantheon that puts Lovecraft's garbage to shame.
Right. Right.
Like, not really sure why those aren't like bigger names. For writing role-playing games, I recommend the same book to everybody, which is a pattern language, which is like just it's a manual on how to build communities. And it's a book that was recommended to me by Sean McCoy. Like it's an incredible resource on how communities are built and interact, and it teaches you a lot about how like pieces of society function together. Like it's just a really fascinating book, but it's presented as a manual on basically how to build a civilization.
Oh wow,
it's a really interesting book that I recommend people trying to read, but especially if you're making interactive things like RPGs, dungeons, locations, stuff like that. It helps to kind of look at that from a anthropological point of view, outside of like always read a bunch of the stuff you're gonna write in. Like I read as much stuff as you can, watch as many movies as you can, watch not horror stuff. Honestly, like
right.
Like some of my Michael Clayton is a really great like corporate thriller. Like Tar is a terrifying movie. Loved it. Like those aren't horror movies. Like watch westerns. Like you watch any action movie made in 1980s, it was almost wholesale stolen from a western that was made in Italy 20 years before. So like watch old movies. I don't know. Like see how society hasn't moved really. Like we're not in any like new realm. All the same prejudices are still there, all the same fears are still there. Like I've been watching Turning Point, the bomb in the Cold War on Netflix, because it's a really great like timeline of like Cold War tensions, which we're looking at now, like the same type of stuff, right? Like horror, like I was saying, is not about being like having it can absolutely be about having the goopiest monster, which rules, but like at the end of the day, like people aren't scared of that, they're scared of what it represents. Like if the goopy monster represents the slow march of death, then yeah, that's pretty scary. You gotta kind of probably figure out how to branch those two together, but that's not on me.
Yeah.
Stephen King's On Writing is a great one. I like that one a lot. I don't know, like just watch, like read. I don't know. Writing horror is so weird because it's so subjective. Because like what I find scary, you might not, and like what we fear is different. But we have fear. So like Peter Straub wrote a bunch of really great stuff, like like political stuff, like not necessarily like people's political memoirs, but stuff like How to Blow Up a Pipeline, The End of Policing. Like you need to learn about the world you're living in in order to properly critique it, I guess. Like, and you can't be blind to the struggles that are going on. So like you really need to like be looking at things like what's going on in Palestine and like what's happening here in the American South, and like how like what's going on in Sudan, and like what's happening all over the world, because like those things aren't going away just because you're not paying attention to them. And like learning about that is more important than like not, I don't know. I have a hard time not like speaking about it and not talking about it and not like engaging with it, because I want to learn how we can be better. Like a better world is possible, right? Like we have to fight for it, and we have to fight for it now. And if you're fighting for it through your art, then you need to be educated on what you're fighting for.
Right. Yeah, and I was thinking as you were talking, and the person I'm coming back to mentally is Clive Barker, who is
sure, yeah,
like Lovecraft was terrified that the world was going to change, was going to keep changing. The world he wanted had already changed,
right?
And he was terrified it was going to keep changing, and that God only knows he was going to be irrelevant, or whatever it was he was really scared of, deep down inside. Clive Barker, desperately terrified that the world will not change,
right? And I think that's
being the 80s.
And I think that's my biggest fear. That and like the idea that like we can't overcome things with love. Like the idea that that's not enough, right? Like those are terrifying concepts. Those are fears. Like I want a better tomorrow. I strive for it, but we have to yell about it today. And so like the way I yell about it is through like, writing corporate satire and like showing people that like the thing about the company is like there are companies worse than the fictional company I've made up.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And we watch this in real time. We see these things happen, and there's so much going on that we don't know how to process it. And that's the great scheme, is that we're so incapacitated by the sheer the volume of the noise that like we can't pinpoint any single thing. But like even a little bit here and there helps people realize that there's not like it's not hopeless, I guess, like that, like we can still make a better tomorrow. But we have to be like yelling about it today.
Right. All right. Logan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rich. This was wonderful.
And I am going to take us offline, and we're going to have a quick interview, like 20 minutes, with Bridgett Jeffries of Chaosium and of Symphony Entertainment. And I was going to tell you, Logan, that when I asked Bridgett to do 3 media recommendations, she came up with 3 questions that you should use to pick your own media recommendations. So you can take that question as wildly different places you like. I'll be taking Logan and I off the air, and then I'm going to put Bridgett on. And I wore the Moonlight on Roseville Beach sweatshirt today, specifically because last 2 episodes, including the pre-record with Bridgett, I've been wearing the same sweater. I went back and looked at that today. I was like, crap. So I've got to wear something different. It's also blue. But Logan, thank you so much. We're just going to wave as we go away, just like Tony taught us. And I'm going to bring in Bridgett. Hey, I'm Richard, and this is the very first pre-recorded segment of Wizard Killers. We are just coming off an interview with Logan Dean that I have no idea how that went, because that's in the future. Oh, because the way things work on the internet with video. Okay. And this is pre-recorded, and that's going to be live. And this is now after the Logan Dean interview. I'm pretty sure that Logan rocked it.
It was amazing, to be honest with you. Like, I watched it twice.
It was just...
It's going to be amazing, Richard, damn it.
The beautiful person next to me is Bridgett Jeffries, who has kind of a double up 2-for-roll, multi-class role in the RPG space, and has been a guest of honor here at Breakout Con in Toronto. Neither Bridgett or I are normally in Toronto. I'm normally in New York, and you're normally in
Ohio. Yeah. Go Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a little about what you do at your we're going to randomly pick one of the jobs as first, because you're multi-class, and you've evened out your levels though.
Multi-classing.
Symphony Entertainment. Tell me a little about Symphony.
Yeah. So Symphony Entertainment Gaming and Arts is my gaming company that focuses on horror tabletop role-playing games. Horror is by far my happy place. So much so that I wanted to cultivate a community, content, and engagement around horror role-playing. So I created and founded Symphony Entertainment the year before the world ended. I had my debut at UConn in Ann Arbor in 2019. And then, as we all know, the world exploded in 2020. And that forced something really beautiful to happen that was super unexpected. It forced us to start gaming online. We couldn't connect in person. We were dealing with multiple layers of just like fear of our health, fear of our finances. Everything was falling apart. We were in isolation. So a bunch of individuals that I started pulling together in Symphony started gaming online, on Discord, on Zoom. Suddenly it was like 2 or 3 horror games going off a day. And it wasn't just your mainstream horror. These were small indie press people that were coming. It's like, oh, this is a great time for me to debut my game that I've been working on. Or this is a good time to start playtesting. And then that momentum kept building and building and building. And we're here now with a stream. We're here with merch. We're here with a community. We're here with sponsorships from amazing people like this gorgeous individual that's sitting to my right. This is to my right, yeah. And so that's Symphony Entertainment right now. We podcast, we stream, we publish, and most importantly, we try to support the horror gaming community the best that we can.
All right. But you also have another role in the gaming community.
I do.
Which is with Chaosium.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I am the community coordinator for Chaosium. If you don't know what that means, most of us don't know on a regular day basis either.
Yeah.
We do the best we can with what we have. But basically, my job falls into 2 categories as a community coordinator with Chaosium. And forgive me for looking over my shoulder. My luggage is right over to the left because I catch a flight in like 2 hours. So we're very intimate and happy in this space.
Last day of the con.
Last day of the con, baby. We're doing the best we can. So the first part of my job as a community coordinator with Chaosium is I am a community ambassador for community content creators. So you, dear listener and viewer, if you are like, have this cool idea in my head, or have this cool idea on my flash drive, or I've always wanted to publish for Call of Cthulhu, or RuneQuest, or 7th Sea, or Pendragon, Chaosium actually has a program that's dedicated to creators like you, for veteran creators or brand new creators who've never put a word on a piece of paper, where they can actually self-publish. And they have hired 3 individuals, myself, Mark Morrison, and Nick Brook, to actually assist you from going from cool idea to monetizing on Drive-Thru-RPG. Which even includes like print. You could literally have something that you publish. Oh, it's in my suitcase, and my suitcase is over there. I have a bunch of community content books with me, printed books that you could have from publishing on our license, which by the way is free to use if you go on our community content program.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's one of the jobs that I do, and I love that aspect so much.
So I know that Chaosium has also been a big advocate of the new ORC license.
Yeah.
And they're running a contest right now for using the basic roleplay system.
Yes!
The oldest generic roleplay system in roleplay history.
Is that a fact?
I think so.
Wow.
It predates both the generic version of the hero system, and it predates GURPS.
Shut the front door.
Yeah, it does.
You learn something new. See, this is what you get when you hang out with industry professionals like Richard.
Yeah, wow.
Any award-winning professionals like Richard.
Industry professionals. But BRP is running a contest right now.
Yes.
For open content that's not going to be owned by Chaosium. Can you tell me a little bit?
Yes. So, total transparency, guys. I was not involved in the building of the BRP contest. Marketing was, so you can thank Mob and Brian Holland all for that. But I'm going to give you some specs from what I do know. And if you're interested in it, you can just very easily go to chaosium.com/the BRP Design Challenge. But the basic role-playing universal game challenge is offering over $10,000 in cash prizes to creators who are looking to develop their own game. So here are some of the hot specs that I can give you. This thing is due when? When is it due? When did we just
End
say
of the
it's
month.
due? End of the month. End of next month.
Yeah.
What month is it?
I think it's March.
End of May. You have
End of
time,
May.
game
Oh, right,
designers. You have
Yeah.
time. It ends May 31st. Effectively, you can submit a pitch for a game. A pitch for a game in
Not a
long
whole
or short
game,
form.
just a
Not a whole
pitch.
game, just
Yeah.
a pitch. Just a pitch, guys. Know where you are right here. You can submit a pitch to Chaosium, a budget for the production on what you need help for your game, an outline on how the potential winnings would be distributed to help bring your vision to life, how the BRP rules. By the way, if you haven't seen that book, it's super studied.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's such a gorgeous book. How the BRPUs have been used in the game, and what makes the use of the BRP system, the setting, unique to the gameplay. So that was me reading a lot of text. Let me just try to break it down Bridgett style.
Yeah.
Game designers, this is your damn moment. You have a major publisher that is willing to throw money at you, that's throwing encouragement at you, to throw an opportunity at you to build your own game. This is your moment. I have not seen something like this in the industry in a long time, if ever, for me. Have you seen something similar like this?
I don't know, because most of the times I see this, and I think this is one of the important things, is that at no point does Chaosium own the content you make for the contest.
In bold print,
not if a finalist,
you own it. I don't know if you can see it, dear
you
camera.
won't be able to see it, but yeah. They don't own finalist content.
No.
There's none of that. Like your stuff is going to disappear into WotC vaults or anything like that.
Right.
Well, this is Wizard Killer, so we there's one publisher we will be just direct with. But at no point does anyone but you own this content until you sign a contract. But the money is not contingent. The prize money and the placements are not contingent on you working with Chaosium.
Working with Chaosium, right,
If
baby.
you win, it's essentially a grant.
It's
to do what you want with the cash.
Oh, my hair just fell out. I don't know what that means for you guys, but enjoy. So, seriously, how crazy does it look? Is it good times?
It's
I'm
good
on,
times.
I'm on
It's
3-day
you.
con here. It's me.
It's you.
I love the girls you walk on. Designers, look at this challenge. Look at yourself and think to yourself, like, could I do this? The answer is yes. The second part of that is, should I do this? Probably.
If you love BRP, and I know there's a lot of people who are that's going to be too crunchy for them, or not where they want to go. But if you like BRP, and that's the place you want to work in, this is a great opportunity.
This is an amazing opportunity for you guys.
to see how together your pitch is.
Yep, absolutely.
To get some pitching skills, because I feel like even if you don't win, you're gonna build up some pitching skills.
The experience alone is going to be absolutely valuable. And just Richard and I were on a panel yesterday here at Breakout Con regarding RPG publishing, and one of the things he mentioned and that kept coming up again and again was like, leverage the community around you. It's okay if this is going to be your first game pitch you've ever submitted, because you know what?
Yeah.
You'll be operating from a point of experience by the time you pitch your second, your third, or your fourth. Leverage the community around you, and see what BRP could actually do for you, because there's a crunchy aspect to it, but it's also hella intuitive. It's roll low. Have a great day.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, if you're considering it, if you know someone that should be considering it, definitely forward this opportunity around, because this is one of those moments where just looking at the fine print and looking at what Chaosium is doing, this isn't coming from a place of predation. It's literally coming from a place of celebration.
That was what I hesitated for a long time to look at the terms of the contest, because I was like,
I don't want to be disappointed in these people.
I
I don't want to be mad.
I don't want to be annoyed. But the fact that you own it and nothing is going to disappear into Chaosium's vault, because at no point in working in this in any of the terms of the contest does Chaosium own this stuff until they separately contact you and say they want to publish this game. Which is, of course, never promised, but
Right.
But that's not the prize.
It's
not
the prize.
The grant money.
Correct. So guys, it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Go chase that down, and good luck.
Yeah. All right. So Logan just talked about Logan and I just talked for I assume like hours on writing horror, possibly only 45 minutes.
It was amazing.
I'm sure it was.
It was top shelf. Yeah.
But you have brought for us today 3 recommendations.
Yes.
For media that you feel like people wanting to do horror games should be engaging with and contacting, or working with and looking at.
Yeah.
So tell me about what those first recommendation is.
Okay. Okay, so here's what had happened was, Richard was like, hey, I need these 3 things that you would recommend for creators in horror to look at. And I went cheesy. But they're still valuable. There's value here.
Yeah.
But there's also Bridgett cheese on here. So the very first thing that I would look at if you're looking at game designing, that's what we're going for, you're looking for game designing, go look at your favorite mechanical system in the game design world for horror. Hard stop.
Hard stop, okay.
Hard stop. So I could tell you to go look at BRP. I could tell you to go look at the year 0. I could tell you to look at Morgborg. I could tell you to look at Forged in the Dark. Forged in the Dark?
Yeah.
I always forget the system because the names change, right? It is Forged, right?
Yeah.
I could tell you to go look at a bunch of things, but you know what? If you're the creator, this is your vision, this is your baby, this is part of your soul being put out in print, go find a system, a mechanical system that speaks to you. You probably know what it is. You know you have that system that's like, man, I will chase that system down anytime when it's in this type of context. Go find that system and then start looking at it from a game designer standpoint versus just a player standpoint. What are they doing particularly that makes that so fun? For example, if you're looking at Dread, one of the things that makes my toes curl and get me really excited about Dread is the physical theatricality of it. It's the sensation of your palms getting wet as you're starting to tap on little tower pieces and see if it falls over. That's why I absolutely love Dread. I also love the character building aspect of it. Let's look at it from a mechanical standpoint. Why do those aspects speak to me? Why do the mechanics of your favorite horror games speak to you? And then start becoming inspired by trying to duplicate or replicate those things that you enjoy in your favorite mechanic. So, out of curiosity, just name a mechanic that you love.
Oh gosh, I love the fact that in Living Horror, you are constantly whittling away to your ability to carry equipment, because all your conditions that you build up in that game go into your equipment track.
Okay.
So you are constantly losing the ability to do much besides run.
Yeah.
And you're dropping things, and you're not able to sort of process more and more stuff because you're constantly building up wounds.
Yes.
You're building up you're building up psychological conditions, you're building up panic attacks, and all this other stuff is stacking in to that equipment track.
Okay.
And each one, each one has things that might clear it or things that might make it go away. But those are going into your equipment track. And so, you're playing modern investigators in a horror kind of setting, or modern individual people who are not trained to deal with horror in any way, shape, or form.
Yep.
So, this isn't Delta Green.
Right.
So it's, you're just constantly dropping what you have, and so much of what you are as a person is what you're carrying around.
Oh.
As this And so these things are kind of kind of coming away from you
Yeah.
as your stats are whittling down, as you're constantly reducing your hit protection and your stats are whittling down, and everything like that's happening until you're sort of there at the end, just with you and some very small bits of equipment that you've continued to carry with you.
Yeah.
Because you've kept dropping things.
Yeah. Oh, you described the hell out of that, babe.
Yeah,
My God, that was sexy.
I love conditions in liminal horror. I think they're some of the best. It's one of my favorite condition systems for horror.
So hard stop. I love the conditions in liminal horror. Is one of my favorite conditions. That is something that you enjoy about that game. That is a mechanic that you enjoy. Back into your favorite mechanic and ask yourself, why do you love it? Mm-hmm. What do the mechanics aid into the storytelling? Because let's be super honest, the mechanics are just as important as the narrative. Look at your favorite mechanics and ask yourself, why do you love those mechanics? You might be surprised if you take an intentional moment to step back, look at what another designer was doing and why, and go, I could do that. You'll probably be able to do it better. Just take that intentional moment to step back and look at it. That's my first one.
All right, second one.
Okay, second one. Y'all ready for the next portion of this charcuterie? How do you actually pronounce that?
I have no idea.
Charcuterie.
I think it's charcuterie.
Is it charcuterie?
I think it's charcuterie.
Charcuterie. I still can't pronounce it. That's the trash. Whatever. Listen, I can't say linoleum either. Struggle with that. Linoleum floors. Don't get me started on cephalopods or whatever. Even in this industry.
I'm just confused by talking to humans. So it's great that I'm in an interview show.
Listen, humans are a whole vibe. And send us a prayer to them constantly. The next thing I would recommend looking for. Go ask yourself who your favorite creator is. In the horror space specifically. Find out who your favorite creator is. And then start asking yourself those exact same questions. Okay. Why? Why does this creator speak to you? Not only as an individual on the other side of the table, what is it about their writing? What is it about their contributions? What is it about what they cultivate in their games that you go, yeah, I could do that. Or I want to do that. Or, ooh, I could do that, but better if I do it that way. There's so much power in slowing the hell down and stopping and thinking and asking yourself your questions. So, I'll do this exercise with you again. I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah. Name a horror creator that you absolutely love.
Well, I don't think they self-identify as a horror creator.
Oh.
And I'm gonna double up. I'm gonna go to one in gaming, and one outside of gaming.
Let's do it.
Meg Baker's Cyrun. Meg Baker's a wonderful human being, but also, Cyrun is a beautiful horror game.
Okay.
Because of the way Meg just removes your ability to control what you're doing.
Oh, can you say that one more time? Just say it one more time.
Your ability to completely control what you're doing. And you always choose to take the risk that you're going to lose that control.
Oh, me, wow.
But because you're in desperate dire straits, you have amnesia, you're being chased.
Yeah.
You're being pursued.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming for you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're going to have to tap into those powers that you can barely control.
Yeah.
To escape from the pursuit, and you're not going to succeed in controlling those powers, and other people that you did not want to hurt are going to suffer.
Oh, ouch. Ooh, that's my
other people. That's I think that's one of my favorite things about that game is that sense of real personal horror.
Yeah,
I can't control who I am, what I do. That I have no ability to take responsibility for the things that I actually done.
Yeah. Bridgett, you're a word. You wrote that out, baby. Woo!
Yeah. Out of gaming, Sylvia Morena Garcia.
Okay. Yeah.
Spec figures out there. Yeah, the range of stuff goes from fantasy and horror back into weird sort of magical realism, just all over any sort of weird fiction. And one of the things I love that she does is really just evoke setting in powerful ways that draw on the history of Mexico and the coming future of Mexico. She said things in the 80s in Mexico City. She said things on the west coast of Mexico in the 50s. She said things in the early days of the 20th century, kind of moving all over Mexico and that one all the way up to El Paso. And just ways she evokes setting the way the setting sort of does so much of the work.
Yeah.
And sort of like creating the sense of isolation, creating the sense.
She does nail isolation really well.
Social isolation.
Yep.
It's silver nitrate relies really heavily on social isolation, even though you're in the middle of one of the largest cities in North America.
Yep.
In Mexico City for that whole novel. I don't think you ever leave Mexico City in the novel, but silver nitrate just it's just
you're here though.
The characters are isolated by the homophobia of people around them, the sexism of people around them.
Yeah, the classism and everything else. Yeah,
and their own sort of like anger in response to that.
Oh, well articulated. Yeah.
So that's Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
Yeah.
I think my other one that I would fall back on, just kind of grabbing right there. So,
yeah. So.
What about you?
Oh, me. Yeah. So. Oh, you put me on the spot.
Yeah.
So
good at. I'm an interviewer.
He's like, "Boo, you on my platform? Are you on my platform right now?" So I think the end game. Oh gosh, there's one name that keeps ringing my bell the hardest and consistently, and it's Graham Walmsley.
Oh yeah.
Graham Walmsley, as a game designer and as a content creator and as a performer and as a person, constantly inspires me to do better, to create differently, to approach game storytelling differently. And honestly, he is one of my biggest inspirations. The very first thing that was published under Symphony in particular was Cthulhu Dark.
Oh,
was like the kind of server is Cthulhu Dark permission from Graham Walmsley. And if I have to take the advice that I just gave you, dear listener, and I have to reflect it back on myself, things that I want to be in Graham. Graham has an approachability that is just, I don't know how to articulate it. He's accessible. He's excited to support you. He's happy to soundboard off you. And he manages his boundaries with that well. That's something that I want to be as a creator. Graham tells stories that hurt. But he's so upbeat and like joyful. He's also like really mellow and kind of calm back. That's something I'm not mellow. I'm calm back. I'm very hyper. I am very flirty. But I can watch Graham as an upbeat individual and watch how he actually makes that horror singing. It's just there's a porous in the way that he tells stories when he was, oh, that's absolutely lovely. So you just cut your hand off. Oh, love. I want to tell stories the way that Graham Walmsley tells stories. Graham game design, from looking at Cthulhu Dark, looking at Cosmic Dark. With, oh my god, if you're not on board with that, I believe he might be doing that on Kickstarter. He might not. I saw something on Facebook just about it this week. But Cosmic Dark, when that gets jump on it immediately. Also, like several of the books that he's published on game design with Richard Hutch is brilliant.
It's not improper. It's
like
called improper game. Improper. I can't remember which of the titles.
Go buy. Just go buy. Steve Cthulhu. You know. Oh my god! I just realized. By Stealing Cthulhu, it's so valuable. I took notes in it, and it's really fun to look at the book too, because you can see where creators took notes. But it's a great experience to read. Graham is giving you the same advice I'm giving you. Just take what someone else has done. In Graham's case, which was H.P. Lovecraft, strip it for parts, remodel it, repurpose it, and get it out there. Which is the exact advice I'm giving you. It's like, go to someone who's done it before, be inspired, take what you can, and go out and do your own thing. Graham Walmsley is mine. I constantly follow Graham around in awe of what he's able to accomplish and what he's able to do. And that is like my benchmark for my next, hey, this is where I need to get, this is where I want to be.
Nice.
Yeah. Right. So go find that creator that inspires you. And then ask yourself why, what, how they're doing it. And really look at yourself and be like, okay, Graham Gent, strip it for parts, remodel it, repurpose it, and get it out there. Which is the exact advice I'm giving you. It's like, go to someone who's done it before, be inspired, take what you can, and go out and do your own thing. Graham Walmsley is mine. I constantly follow Graham around in awe of what he's able to accomplish and what he's able to do. And that is like my benchmark for my next, hey, this is where I need to get, this is where I want to be.
Nice.
Yeah. Right. So go find that creator that inspires you. And then ask yourself why, what, how they're doing it. And really look at yourself and be like, okay, which of these aspects can I also do? What can I build on? What can I change?
All right. Recommendation number 3.
Oh, number 3. Oh, y'all are going to love the cheese on this one. This is the whole board being thrown at your face. You need to look at yourself. What type of creator are you, Richard, when it comes into the horror space?
Really exhausted one.
Oh, but clip your mic. I love you. A really exhausted one. Yeah. You're a really exhausted one.
No. I am somebody who, and we talk about you and I talk about this a lot. That you can tell we're friends.
Yeah.
We've been on panels and discussed this together. We've had personal conversations about this. That I love stakes in horror.
Mm-hmm.
What gets me going in the sense that is not what will you do to get away, is what will you do to help somebody else get away. Is my big
make it
horror
hurt.
question.
Yes.
So like, my favorite horror movies include things like Nightbreed and Near Dark. And those are not just stories about rescuing people.
Yeah.
The original Shining, the novel, is about rescuing.
It's a rescue mission at the end of the day. Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah. So it's those are some of my favorite horror media. So that sense of like, what will I do? What will I sacrifice to get somebody else out?
Yeah.
Is a question that I find just very exciting.
Yeah.
And very interesting when writing horror.
Yes. Oh, I like that. How does that work into how you design your games? How you want to design
and
your
this
games?
comes back to the Sylvia Marina Garcia thing. It's like you're embedded in a place, and what do you love about the place? What do you hate about the place? Who are you willing to carry with you?
Oh, that speaks so well to Moonlight now.
Yeah.
Oh, that speaks.
Because even like I love the places that I based Roseville Beach on, but I also know there are tons and tons of problems with them.
Yeah.
They have problematic histories. They have problematic people. What are you willing to do to get other people out?
Oh God, that is so stunning. That is.
You're the one who's stunning.
No. we are. Damn it. Collectively, we are. Honestly, sit down, look in the creative mirror with yourself. Don't be afraid of what you see. Think about the stories that you want to tell, and then go tell those stories. Use inspiration from.
You're not getting out of this.
The door is right here. I have a flight to catch. I don't know what you guys want from me.
You got 5 minutes.
Okay. Who am I as a creator? I really want to pull the Graham Gent line from yesterday. Is that okay for your audience?
Yeah.
Symphony has cultivated a certain style of storytelling that is pretty consistent over, I'll say 80-90% of the games that we tell, that we stream, that we podcast, that we write. We have all hovered around this one aspect of horror storytelling. I didn't have a name for it. I just knew it was like the Symphony way. That's a big thing. It's like we're really big on Symphony thirst. We flirt with each other a lot. I know you're a big surprise face. I'm an asexual that has a polycule of multiple spouses. We're a big focus on like being sex positive. We're a big focus on diverse stories, but our storytelling specifically, Graham Gentz coined this one this week. We're gonna go with it. It's called the Hurt Me Daddies. Yes, you heard that correctly. The Hurt Me Daddies. Symphony storytellings really like to get to the horror, and then we like to be hurt. We like to almost be shunted into that subspace. We are forced to surrender control to the story, to the plot, to the storyteller, whatever, and we enjoy the emotional pain that gets inflicted. We want to feel, we want to dive in. Survival isn't typically on our priority list. We don't really care if we make it to the end of the story. We just want to see how far we can hurt until we break. And then once we break, what does that look like after the break? And that sense of exploratory horror, especially in a safe container, because we're really big on safety tools, we're really good at protecting each other. That's something that we prioritize and we're very intentional about. It makes for better stories. It is what it is. So, who am I as a creator? According to Graham Gentz and Symphony, I am a Hurt Me Daddy creator. Because I want the horror to hurt.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So look at yourself. All society, look at yourself. Rich and I were talking about this on the panel yesterday. Every creator invests a portion of who they are into their creation. It's inevitable. We are human beings with our own flaws and backstories and experiences and traumas and blah, 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 blah. We sow a lot of that into the content. So stop and look at what you're investing into your content and pick out the pieces that you want for the story that you want to tell. That's the 3 best pieces of advice I give you if you develop. See who does your mechanics that you enjoy. Go look at the creator that you enjoy. Go look at aspects of yourself that you enjoy. Combine them, put it together, and go off and conquer.
All right. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. I love you. This is exciting. We're
just going to turn. Yeah, we're in a very little booth here because otherwise we're going to get the background noise of a hotel that's exiting 3 different conventions today, I think.
Honey.
And a normal body of guests.
Yeah.
A body of normal guests. I don't know. Some body.
There's some bodies.
Yeah, there's some bodies. It's a horror. It's a horror show. Yeah, we got bodies. We're gonna wave at the camera. Stop.